that we talked about yesterday is very real, because if they get themselves in a terrible position, well then it doesn't matter what happens in Magnus's game, really.
Yeah, and
position to the Archangel opening. Yeah, Magnus hasn't played the most direct attempts. That still, I mean, it resembles an Italian, resembles a slower Spanish, with all the pieces pretty much on the board, just one set of pawns being eliminated. Magnus, this is one area he's been very predictable over the last year. Anytime a black bishop lands on the c5 square, he seems to these days put his knight on c3 and land it into d5. So interesting decisions at these early stages. Magnus has just made a move, I believe. Yeah, I don't know, what do we think? Recap to this position?
Yeah.
Very briefly?
Yeah, let's do it, just to make sure we know how we got there. Maybe there's some interesting prep that the players will unpack when they visit the confessional booth as well. So, don't have to spend a ton of time. Run us through it.
Yeah, let's do it. And actually, it's the third Spanish of the day. That's been the trendy opening in this final round. We've seen this position before. This is where Hikaru Nakamura brought his bishop out to c5 against Pragg. Instead here, Magnus and Fabi walking down more well-trodden paths. Here, knight to c3, not the most popular, but Magnus against Pragg a couple of days ago walked into the open Spanish and he allowed black to take this pawn on e4 and didn't get any opening advantage. So maybe just trying to keep his opponents guessing. Bishop coming out to c5, very standard opening play, and to catch up with the light position a4, black leaves the a file right now, allows a trade of pawns, but ultimately black is rock solid. Pawn to h6, the last move here. Yeah, Magnus seems to have moved. It looks like Fabi's on sync right now, but we don't have an update. I think Magnus has just played the move h3, so a bit of copycat. Feels really tentative, just tiptoeing around each other. There we go, h3, d6 has been played, and I'm expecting Magnus soon to jump the knight into d5. Still well-known theory, and knight e2 instead. Keep attention, he's going to park his knight over on the king side. Still a lot of maneuvering ahead, Anna.
you expected knight d5, but instead Magnus wants to keep more pieces on the board. Do you think that's because of potentially wanting to keep more winning chances, or do you think it's just to get Fabi out of the preparation that he would have predicted knight d5?
I think both. I think a bit of both. Magnus, he'll have half an eye on Hikaru's game. We've seen Magnus walking around the tournament, or half the time he's blocking our cameras, but Magnus, yeah, he's definitely got a fair eye on the other game.
And maybe he'll be in the confessional booth first talking about it, but yeah. Doesn't go for knight d5, plays knight e2. Do you think the top players are thinking at all, or did they look at all at Fabiano Caruana's chessable course on the Archangel? Not speaking for Anish Giri, we know he did. He's talked about it often, and actually played an improvement over one of the main lines in that team chess battles we had. It was actually really funny. Lost in the banter of Anish verbally abusing me was that he actually improved on Anish's on Fabi's theory in one of the lines. You should check out one of those games. It was funny. But what do you think? Does Magnus stay on top of what content is being created by some of his rivals, and do you think he looked at all at the Archangel course?
I was watching that match, Danny. I was learning and enjoying.
Yeah.
I was Team Danny though. Anish, naughty boy. But yeah, I think. I'm slightly better in this endgame. Maybe he wants to trade queens first, actually. But this one looks like it's going to fizzle out, so symmetrical. So this is one for Fabi. If he wants to calculate, trade everything. The other method is a bit riskier, involving trading all these pawns. We say this is risky because Black has two isolated pawns now, two big weaknesses, but Black's bishops are so active. I wonder whether you just continue attacking the center or whether you can blow it open. Often you play the move d5 and it becomes a bit chaotic. You want to open diagonals here. If white tries to bypass you, you just drop a knight into e4. You don't even think about it. It might be a pawn sack, but ultimately, most likely you'll win back a pawn in the near future. Actually, the more I look at this, the more I think this might be the path forward.
I love how you say that Black just drops the knight into e4 and asks questions later, right? And there aren't a lot of positions where you have a move that is so important, but Black's desire to open up those two bishops on the diagonal is worth everything, and the dynamic pressure that the bishops get almost always ensures that you will win back your material, potentially with interest, right? If the e5 pawn becomes a problem and you have the open diagonals along the way. So really great breakdown there of what happens with the pawn tension for someone who doesn't play this opening for either side, but loves learning. So good stuff.
Yeah, this is a crossroads for Fabi, but he'll take some time. The good news for him is that it's likely going to become a bit more simple over the next few moves, Anna, and a good moment for him to pause.
Certainly, and lots to calculate. I think if we just show one more time the variation you pointed out, the trades on d4, I was just gonna include that it looks like white could win a pawn by capturing the b5 pawn after d5, but you don't really gain a pawn because black will take on e4, and at the end of the line, the d file is opening up as well, so I don't think that white will ever have a chance to take on e4.
That's a very good point. It looks like you can grab this pawn in the center, but this could backfire really badly. You mentioned the d file, check, and maybe we just capture this pawn. There's a pin on the first rank, the knight is hanging, there's going to be checkmating ideas against the white king. Magnus needs to avoid this one.
These positions are full of, lines like this are probably pretty straightforward for guys who've played the position before, but they're full of variations where the eval bar starts 50-50. Everyone's just maintaining the tension, and then at some point something happens, and if one person went one move deeper than the other, the house of cards can crumble, right? And so you have to be careful. It's a good point, Anna, that you just have to be always going all the way to the end of the line. Sometimes we have a tendency as chess players to stop once we feel warm and cozy and think, okay, that justifies the variation. But in positions like this, you have to go all the way to the end to make sure you're not missing some sort of tactic.
Yeah, the best coaches always say that, Danny. I remember having sessions with Yusupov a few years ago, and he was like, why are you stopping there? One move further. And I would be like, okay, this is the evaluation. One move further, keep going. And the more you train, the further you can see. That's how these players have such a kind of deep tactical eye. It's all practice. Okay, this one level for now.
Let's back up, leave this one where it is, and that line instead of bishop takes d5, and maybe it's still okay, but ultimately, we're going to back up really quickly because we've had a draw agreed to between Magnus Carlsen and Fabiano Caruana, which breaks their 4-game consecutive decisive streak. If you missed that nugget earlier on shared in the show, the last four times these guys had played, including a couple battles here at Norway Chess, somebody won, but not today. It is a draw, back to their old 2018 World Chess Championship ways. They're going to be headed to Armageddon.
Yeah, a fair result and unexpectedly sudden, we've got to say. We thought this game was level. I think we did for a long time, but we didn't expect it to end so abruptly. Maybe Magnus just assessing the Hikaru game as being roughly in the balance as well. A bit of a look at the screen there. He just wants to bank the points and bet on his chances. He will need to win the Armageddon, though, if he wants to keep his fate in his own hands, Magnus Carlsen.
Very true. Maybe we could rewind the last couple of